Welcome back to the Creative Leadership Network, known as TCLN. I am IBK. Right here at TCLN, I love to educate to elevate. I take current news events such as immigration, today's episode, and I love to break it down, get into details so that we can empower ourselves and really move forward. So as people begin to vote or they begin to make choices, whatever they're doing in life, they'll be more informed than they were yesterday. So let's get into today's episode, Barbara Jordan, immigration, and what has happened from the 90s to current, and how is all of this playing out with ICE, and is Barbara Jordan being honored more in word than she is in deed? One of the things I thought about, like I said, is that when I saw that, I felt like Barbara Jordan was honored in word, but she's not being honored in deed, right? So she's known as a person for equality, justice, and all this kind of stuff. But are we seeing that? Are we seeing that reflected in the work or the policy that she was a part of and left behind? And I don't think so. Not today. I do not think so. And I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one. What interests me most about Barbara Jordan is that Barbara Jordan was invited with the Clinton administration. And Clinton wanted her to work on what was known as this policy that had to do with immigration. And this particular policy, we're going to dive into a little bit deeper in the show. We're going to get into the details of it, the way that she thought. I'm going to show a few clips of her speaking, her specifically speaking, her thoughts, her opinions. But I'm going to go a little bit deeper than that. I'm going to actually dive into the policy itself and some of the things that were put into place, some of the things that happened during the Clinton administration. And then I'm gonna go a little bit further. And what I'm gonna do is compare that to, at the same time, during the 90s, what was done for Blacks, or what policies were being put in place for Blacks that were helping Blacks. Because I think both of those are important. So if you were dealing with immigration And you'll get to see in video clips some of the things that were actually said when it came to immigration and what they were trying to work towards immigration. And since she was bold, Barbara Jordan was a bold character. She was a bold lady, a lady of stature. And so they wanted her really bad. They liked that. You know what I'm saying? It's almost like people who are too afraid to say stuff themselves. You know how people want something, but they're too afraid to say it themselves, so they get somebody else to say it. It's almost like that to me when it comes to this, because she said some bold things and some striking things. It should be things that everybody agree with, but unfortunately in our society, people don't always think that way. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, they just don't. Depends on what side of the table you're on or what shoes you're walking in. People just don't, right? And so who are you going to put out there the most to have something to say the most? Well, the person who is articulate, the person who's knows law, but also the person who has the courage to say what a lot of people don't have the courage to say. When I look at her, she does remind me of Donald Trump today. She do, when it comes to that part. I'm not saying in all things, y'all don't go crazy on me. But when it comes to immigration, she reminds me exactly of the firmness of what she thought and the firmness of what Trump has to say. It's just that in Trump's administration, it appears, we're going to get into that later also, it appears that there are such great injustices going on. But I guarantee you, things are not always what they appear to be. And we're going to tap into that a little bit too. So all of that is upcoming, and stay with me because this is an educational journey. This is not an entertainment journey. This is not a journey where we get all hyped up. This is a journey where we learn. We learn some things because we look at YouTube, we look at all this stuff, but do we really look into the policy, especially our generation? Are we really looking at the policy of what happened in the 90s that are happening today in the time that we're living in? You understand what I'm saying? And what has changed since then? Barbara Charlene Jordan, born February 21st, 1936 in Houston, Texas, okay? So now, guys, what I want to start with is I want to start with the Jordan Commission on Immigration in 1990s. Let's start with that, right? That's important. That's important. The reason why I feel that this is important, because it's actually tying into what's playing out today, right? So let's get into it. I'm going to read off some stuff. And I do have to read it off. It's information, guys. I don't have it memorized. So just bear with me. But learn so that way you will be informed and you can take this with you, okay? So the Jordan Commission on Immigration in 1990s, a crisp vision statement on immigration in the United States. You can find this report of the U.S. Commission on the Immigration Reform, informally known as the Jordan Commission. So this immigration reform, it touched on a few things: family reunification, employment-based immigration, enforcement measures to stem unauthorized immigration, and numerical limits on all classes of immigrants, non-immigrants, and asylees. Between 1994 and 1997, it issued 4 reports. In the last report, Becoming an American, Immigration and Immigrant Policy, the Commission defined a vision in 90 words. Properly regulated immigration and immigrant policy serves the national interest by ensuring entry of those who will contribute most to our society and helping lawful newcomers adjust to life in the United States. It must give due consideration to shifting economic realities. A well-regulated system sets priorities for admission, facilitates nuclear family and reunification, gives employers access to a global labor market while protecting U.S. workers, helps to generate jobs, economic growth, fulfills our commitment to resettle refugees as one of the several elements of humanitarian protection of the persecuted. So that was what it summed it up to be. But I'm going to take us a little bit further because we really need to understand what was this all about, right? And because we know during the 90s, there was a lot going on with Black people. You had the crack epidemic, you had the epidemic, you had single moms. A lot of the homes were broken up. You also had very hard times for Blacks to find jobs, not just the Black male, but the Black female too. And you also had a lot of how can I put it? It was injustices, but it was more covert injustices, more done through the system, through the healthcare system. And I'm gonna get into that a little bit later. There were times that women were in shelters with their children. All kind of things were going on in the 90s and very, very early 2000s. But if you were in some type of shelter or something, there was really nothing wrong with you, but you would be encouraged to go through the program. See, a lot of people don't know about that. You was encouraged to go through the program. So the program to outsiders looked like you were getting a skill set, you was getting your health care, you were applying and signing up for housing, and you would be on the wait list, and your children would be getting daycare while you would be out looking for jobs. That's what it appeared to be. But a lot of people don't know this, and I was there and I saw it. A lot of the program was about getting you on some type of medications. And a lot of people who didn't want to be on those psych meds or medications, and they didn't want to claim I'm depressed or I'm this and I'm that, it was very hard for them to get housing. So there was a lot of injustices going on. And I do mean a lot. Do you understand me? So while immigration was working on one hand, there were a lot of Blacks being, how would I put this? Pretty much dismantled on the other hand. You understand what I'm saying? So, anyway, the commission proposed to reduce legal immigration to 550,000 per year, down from approximately 800,000. And I asked myself this question. I said, could that be the mockery of the Barbara Jordan community? Could that be the reason why? Because a lot of people don't understand like the battles, right? They don't understand that this stuff is real. Immigration is real. And when people feel entitled to something and you start telling them no, it becomes very, very a battle. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like it becomes war. Like people don't understand that it becomes war, and there's been a war going on with immigration for a very, very long time. And when people feel that they are supposed to have something or that they are entitled to something, and you start saying, no, we're going to do it this way, people get offended because that's not their agenda, and people get offended and they get upset, and people have all kind of ways to mock and to talk and to do a lot of different things that are so undercut that would blow your mind, right? And to me, the Barbara Jordan community in Austin, Texas is one of those. To me, it is a mockery. To me, it's not honoring Barbara Jordan. You often wonder, how can a woman be Black, fight for equality, um, and some things are named in her honor, but you don't see it in deed. So when I landed upon this neighborhood, one of the first things that I noticed is that, like I said, it's in the middle of the day, so it's not like that. But usually, like early in the mornings and all that kind of stuff, it'll be homeless people laying out there at the bus stop, nowhere to go. They just sleep at these bus stops, and they don't just do it there; they do it around town. But this in particular area is named after Barbara Jordan. And what I paid attention to is that this area is predominantly white and Latina who fought for equality. I was like, that's kind of strange. Predominantly filled with whites and Hispanics and other races, but Blacks would be sleeping at bus stops with nowhere to go. And why would they stay in an area known? Why would they come to an area and live in an area known for a woman who supposedly had fought for justice and equality? and you would see things like that. And these people walk by these people, ride by them all day long, like you see, and they don't reach a hand out. They don't care. Uh, it's like, to me, it's like, I don't know how people would look at that, but to me, it's like mockery. Everybody may don't look at the same, but to me, it's like mockery. So I said, well, let me check more into Barbara Jordan, right? Barbara Jordan supposedly stood for inclusion. She supposedly stood for the American people and the welfare of the American people. That's what that community should reflect. It should reflect all people, not a predominantly of just a race there, and then a very small percentage of people who look like her. I just don't think so. Do you understand what I'm saying? So to me, sometimes things can be mockeries and undercuts. I know people think it's, and I'm gonna get into that too. I know people think, well, it's about property value, it's about regentrification and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, and some things are about blatant mockery too. So, but anyway, let me continue. While this deal was being made for immigrants and it was going to be in the nation's best interest, according to what this commission and this bill and all this stuff was talking about, this legislation, the problem is that they would pick and choose the immigrants that they wanted, and the ones that they didn't want, they wanted to make sure that they didn't get into the country. And to me, I don't think that that was just done with immigrants. I also believe that that was done with Black Americans. And I know people don't see it that way, but by the time I break some of this down, you're going to be able to see what I'm talking about. I'm going to show a clip of Barbara Jordan talking, and when she speaks, you're going to see her talking about how they were saying that they only wanted the skilled, the skilled. They did not want the unskilled, right? And how that would affect if they brought in all these unskilled workers, people already over here who didn't have jobs, who didn't have, you know, what they particularly needed. And that's true. It would do that, right? But what people fail to realize, I don't think that this choice was being made when it came to immigrants. I think a lot of this stuff was being made when it came to Black America, period. So again, stick with me and you'll see where I'm going, right?
This clip is used for commentary, analysis, and education under Section 107 of the Copyright Act.
Denounce the hostility which seems to be developing around immigrants. That is not healthy. We cannot sustain ourselves as a nation if we condone divisiveness in this society of immigrants. At the same time, we disagree with those who label our efforts to control immigration as anti-immigrant. The Commission has concluded that a properly regulated system of legal immigration is in the national interest of the United States. The Commission recommends significant redefinition of priorities and reallocation of admission numbers to fulfill more effectively the objectives of our immigration system. Now, to be specific, the immigration recommends a tripartite immigration policy that permits the entry of nuclear family members, professional and skilled workers, and refugees. We propose core immigration levels of 550,000 per year. The Commission emphasizes nuclear family. We recommend as a priority the closest family members, spouses and minor children of citizens, of legal immigrants, and parents of citizens are admitted as expeditiously as possible. I urge the Congress to adopt tough policies needed to verify employment authorization. What the Commission is concerned about are the unskilled workers in our society in an age in which unskilled workers have far too few opportunities open to them. When immigrants are less well educated and less skilled, they may pose economic hardships for the most vulnerable of Americans, particularly those who are unemployed or underemployed.
Us to, when we go over this today, to see a pattern of our government playing God, playing the picking and choosing system, and how it really has had an effect on a lot of Black Americans, on people in general, but a lot of Black Americans who people have been here for generations and generations and generations. And I want people to really understand what I am saying, what I am really trying to bring forth with this information. Because I think sometimes, again, people make decisions that they think is in our best interest or in the nation's best interest, but words sound good. When people are saying words, it sound good. But when the deeds are getting done, it's something that's happening that is being unjust to a people. And in this case, it has been Black people. You understand that? Not all Black people. Because like I said, I believe the same choice when you see this clip that they were thinking of when it came to immigrants. I believe they were also thinking of this when it came to Black America too. I just don't think that they wanted to say it out their mouths that way. Because remember, you can't say that about all Americans, right? You have to make it look like, oh, we're just talking about immigrants. No. And you can see this. You can see this imprint. My question is this: why did Barbara Jordan take on this commission with Clinton to really work with immigrants and to make a stance about the immigrants during a time when Black Americans needed so much help? Why? I looked into a lot of different angles, and I said, because I wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt. I said, well, maybe she was doing stuff for Black people too, at the same time she was dealing with this immigration stuff, and I'm not talking about just words. Words are words. We're talking about policy, things that were actually done, like these policies that were done with the immigrants, right? And I said, well, maybe she just wasn't allowed to. Maybe they picked and choose her. And I was watching the clip earlier, and she was doing the interview. And as she was talking, that's basically what she was saying. I want to give you something that she was saying, right? And this came from, and I'm going to show you here. So this comes from the one Barbara Jordan Oral History Interview, 3/28/84. The LBJ Library, meeting LBJ. Okay. And she was basically talking about how she first got to meet LBJ. She was sent a telegram, and LBJ specifically told her that he wanted her to come in to talk about this thing on housing, right? And they were looking at an initiative that had to do with civil rights, right? So it was during the time of civil rights, and these leaders that were very much into civil rights, but for some reason they wanted to invite her in. They knew she was powerful. They knew she had a very powerful voice and she had great ideas. So they wanted to invite her to the table. So they sent her a telegram, right? Matter of fact, Lyndon B. Johnson sent it out to her. And they gave her instruction on what to do and how to show up. So when she showed up on what to do and everything, she said, I got in like it was magic. That's exactly what she said. You guys, you can go watch the video. And she was basically saying that there was this newspaper, and the name of the newspaper was called Evans Novick Column, right? And it mentioned that her visit to the White House, and it stated that she had impressed the persons at the White House and Lyndon B. Johnson in the meeting more than others who knew and had been direct work with the civil rights bills. So in other words, they were saying that she was more impressive than everybody, even the people who had been working on the civil rights thing for a very long time. All of these people, right? You know what Barbara Jordan had to say about that? This was her talking. She said that was a plant. She said that came from a national newspaper, and she said that was a indirect plant from the administration, from the White House. This is her words exactly. This is her words. Because to me, she was basically saying, nah, no way. You know what I'm saying? But that was the start of a lot of her relationship with Lyndon B. Johnson. She would go on to have many other meetings with him. And he once told her, if you need anything, I don't care what it is. It could be money. It could be this or that. She says out her own mouth. She said, he tells her, you make sure that you contact me. And it is done. So she had a lot of favor with Lyndon B. Johnson. Do you understand what I'm saying? Lots of favor. But I want you to see that. I want you to see that. Let me repeat that again. Barbara Jordan, oral history interview, 3/28/84, the Lyndon B. Johnson Library. So that's the YouTube part. And it's called Meeting LBJ. She's basically telling you herself, honey, that was a plant. That was planted. It was a plant, you know. And what else has been a plant that lead me to, I'm just saying, like, that led me to question what else has been a plant. I mean, at least she was honest enough to say it out her mouth. We hear people on YouTube all the time talking about what's a plant, this is plant, that's a plant. But she was this honest about it. You know what I'm saying? But I've also seen other interviews about her, and she would say that in the positions that she would be in, the things that she was allowed to do. So it seems like she was limited. She could do so much, but there was also a limitation there too. But when I look into immigration, and I'm finna show you a clip right now, and I want you to fully listen, because in this clip, she's going to say some things. And I think that this is what leads to her not necessarily being honored so much in deed. Yes, in word, but not in deed, okay?
I urge the Congress to adopt tough policies needed to verify employment authorization. What the Commission is concerned about are the unskilled workers in our society in an age in which unskilled workers have far too few opportunities open to them. When immigrants are less well educated and less skilled, they may pose economic hardships for the most vulnerable of Americans, particularly those who are unemployed or underemployed. And the Commission sees no justification to the continued entry of unskilled foreign workers unless the rationale for their admission otherwise serves a significant national interest, as does the admission of nuclear family members and refugees.
And we'll be right back. Welcome to the Creative Leadership Network, known as TCLN, where education is the specialty and solutions are the art. I'm IBK. At TCLN, we believe that news is a tool to educate, elevate, and advance us in a nation towards prosperity for posterities. We go further, dig deeper, highlighting 3 important levels that affect us deeply in America: social, systemic, and spiritually. We turn factual information into learning experiences that promote personal growth, leadership development, and community solutions. To watch news that educates to elevate, make sure to tune in every Wednesday at 6:30 p.m. on Austin Public, Channel 10. Also, you can tune in on Thursdays at 7:30 p.m. on YouTube. To find out more information about TCLN Network and what we're up to and when postings will air, visit us at www.thecreativeleadershipnetwork.com. All right, so you guys get that, right? Now, this is what I was talking about. It seems like Barbara, that even though she was very gifted, very talented, very astute, a very, woman who can get things done with her voice and stuff like that, it seems like they really wanted her more to be their mouthpiece for what they wanted, for their national interests, their national interests, not necessarily for the national interests of this country as a whole, especially when it came to black people, but for their national interests. They basically was looking for these skilled workers, right, to come over here and to do the things that they wanted them to do for their, again, national interests. This is what I was talking about when I was talking about Ian Roberts. You guys get what I'm saying, right? So a lot of people wanted to misinterpret what I was saying. A lot of people wanted and they just wanted to argue. I don't want to argue. I want to look at stuff for what it really is. How can a person be here for 20 years? 20 years, guys. And you didn't know. Y'all didn't know. He went from level to level and leveled on up to superintendent, and somehow no one knew that he was on an expired visa. Oh, that he once had a gun while he was in it. Come on, guys. It's a hoax. But this man contributed. See, they want what they want for their what? National interests. You understand what I'm saying? But were they looking out at that time for black interests also? Black people who are on this land, who've been on this land for many, many years, or were they being shut out? And were they being shut out institutionally? I grew up in the 90s. I saw a lot, sweetheart. And I do mean a lot. A lot. Okay? So that's why I wanted to kind of talk about that, because instead of them just really bettering black communities, helping out black people, stop oppressing black people, and building them up so that they could be the skilled workers, you understand what I'm saying, who were already Americans, they didn't want that. They wanted to bring people over here for their national interests, to do what they wanted them to do. So do you guys see where I'm getting at? Do you see where I'm getting? Do you see how there was a loophole in the 90s when it came to blacks? Do you see how that is playing out today? Do you understand what I'm saying? Because instead of you building up people here, what policies was being put in place for all of those blacks, millions and millions and millions of blacks? Yeah, they had many programs, they had all this stuff, and it all sounded good on paper, right? But we all know what was happening in the black community. People were being put on psych meds. People were was losing housing. People were going through all kinds of situations. People were trying to go to college in debt. All kinds of things were going on. Now, don't get me wrong. There's always an exception of blacks that do well. That's just the way it is. And there's another clip out there, guys. I was listening to Barbara Jordan. I've been listening to her stuff. And she was talking about how she would think about all her success, right? And what she would tell the next person, right? And one of those clips, she was talking about how she used, and I've seen Oprah do this too, right? But Oprah was trying to tell the truth too, and they basically told her to shut up. But she was trying to say there was one point in time in her career and life that she would look at the next black person, and these are young black people, and say, what is your problem, honey? Like, all these excuses, get up off your tail, do what you need to do. I did it, you can do it too type attitude. I've seen it 1,000 times myself too. One thing I can say about Barbara had some honesty when it came to her, because I listened to some of her stuff. You just have to really be listening. You understand what I'm saying? Like, she had some honesty when it came to her, to some of her stuff. And she was basically saying that she later would realize that doesn't work like that for everybody. Because she understands that if she wasn't chosen by the people, you understand what I'm saying? And we're not talking about the people that vote you in or all this stuff that be going on. By Lyndon B. Johnson, for example, because he tells her in one of those interviews out there, he says, listen, I like her, she's coming. Open the door for her, basically let her through. Same thing with Oprah Winfrey. What did King say about her? We're going to take you to the top. We're going to crown you to the top. Don't you get the big head? Oh, yes. Yes, this is Oprah, right? This is when they gave it a show and all. So these people were granted and open doors. You know what I'm saying? You can do the same jobs out there. You can do the same great things. But one thing I like about Barbara Jordan is that she came to terms to understand that those doors are not always open for everybody like that. It doesn't work like that. Someone can follow in her footsteps and try to be the best that they can be, study like she studied, did what she did. That doesn't mean that the door will be open to them. They may choose somebody else according to what's going on today. You understand what I'm saying? And I love it when people are that honest. I love it when people acknowledge stuff like that. Because it's not that people don't try. It's not that people don't work hard. But there are systems that do things for their own reasons. And I think at this point in time of Barbara's life, because she had kind of caught scoliosis or something like that, you begin to reflect on your life. You begin to think about all the work you've done, all the things you've done, and all the things you've tried to achieve. And you kind of calm down, you think about life a little bit more and experience a little bit more, and you begin to level out. And I think that's what she was doing during some of those interviews in her later time. And being more adaptable and more honest and stuff like that. Y'all, it's like Childish Gambino said, this is America. Now, I want to get into this property that I showed you with that footage earlier, right? The Barbara Jordan thing that was honored in her name. I did find a few details. So in the mid 2000s, the land values in Mueller soared, with average homes quickly reaching prices well beyond their reach for former East Austin families. And although developers included affordable housing quotas, these units were limited, competitive, and often targeted to moderate, not to low income earners. Okay. Many Black families displaced from Central East Austin by rising taxes, redevelopment, and lack of housing options moved farther east or out of the city entirely. This created what many scholars and community advocates call symbolic inclusion with physical exclusion. Let me say that again. So this created what many scholars and community advocates called symbolic inclusion. In other words, using her name with physical exclusion, not seeing the results that you should see when that's named after somebody, a Black woman of that stature, right? So they use Barbara Jordan's name to brand the space as progressive, like, oh, we're progressive, but the beneficiaries are overwhelmingly white, middle to upper class income people. Okay. So I only, when I was looking at this data, so just so you know, I used the U.S. Census Bureau, American Community Survey, Census Reporter, City of Austin Planning Department, and Austin School District. So that's where some of that stuff come from, right? Census and city data. This is what I want to touch on right now, before I step into a little bit more of the policy that I said we're going to go over. We in America have been called Black, right? So that's what they call us. You have these race names that they call you. You've heard me talk about race before. You know how I feel about race and all these words about race. But what I want you to pay attention to is that there's a place called Mexico, Mexicans. There's a place that's called Asia, Asians. China, Chinese. India, right? These different places, right? All of these different places. Africa, Africans, right? So all of these places, no matter what, all over the world, even to Burkina Faso, right? Each place has its land and it has its people. Every single place has its land and it has its people. The one thing I noticed about the United States of America is that the United States of America is the only place that it calls the land of immigrants. And I want you to pay closely attention to where I am going and why I'm saying this. It is the only place that says that. You can go to China, you will find Africans, you will find Europeans, you will find all types of people who live there, some on probably passports, but others who became citizens there. And it will not be called a land of immigrants. You can also do the same thing in Africa. and it will not be called a land of immigrants. You can also do the same thing in any place, right? Brazil, any place, I don't care where it is. Mexico, different types of people stay in Mexico, and it will not be called a land of immigrants. Why is the United States the only place that is called a land of immigrants? Why did they decide that this place would be like that? And who was this place actually taken from? Not what they sold us in history, not what they told us in books, not what because I remember doing research saying, what are some of these techniques that are used that if you want to steal land or property or any type of things that belong to people previously passed, especially throughout families and generations and consensuses, how would you get that from them illegally? And one of the ways is to lie about history, is to create the fabrications of history. If you create a fabricated history and you nullify a people's mind, then you can deceive them, right? So let's start with blacks. Why are blacks the most targeted people in the United States of America? I just want to know that. Why? Why are they the most locked up in prisons? Why are they the most locked up in jails? Why are they the most always claimed to have curses on them like cancer, diabetes, strokes? Why are they the most? Do you understand what I'm saying? Even during COVID, the most to die because of their disposition. Honey, I was in Colorado. Ooh, I'm talking about real cold Colorado for a whole almost a year up there. And let me tell you something, baby, those white people up there love all the fast food lines up there. There was a whole strip right there where I was. I used to cook every day. I ain't eat none of that fast food stuff. Baby, they had KFC, McDonald's, all of them on the strip up there. And I stayed in a nice area too, by the way. And white folks love to be out there eating that stuff. So it was just all this psychology that was sold about why blacks die the way they do, why blacks end up the way they do. Now, I started to pay attention to something because I've been across a lot of states. And we've been told things about Indians, right? That this land was supposed to have been stolen from them, right? We've been told things about, and I'm not talking about people from India, just in case you guys don't know. Those are people also up out of Asia and other parts. You understand what I'm saying? I am talking about supposed to be these Indians, right? We've been told stuff about Africa, right? And the slave trade, right? And what I took notice for, I've been to places like Virginia, South Carolina, all these different places across the states. And I would see Africans. Lots and lots of Africans. And they would be doing well. Some of them will have businesses, some of them have great jobs. They're just doing well. And my question was this: if Africans were so targeted like that, and all these races targeted them in the slave trade, the Spaniards, the Europeans, all these different places, right? Why are they treated so well here, but the Black Americans are targeted very, very hard here? And then they're telling Black Americans that you came from there. That's where y'all come from. Even though we were never taught that growing up. That's what they've been telling us, right? Over the last 20 years. I think it's been like the last 20 something years. They've really been trying to drill that home, right? Because they didn't used to teach us that when we were young. I'm sorry, guys. They just didn't. Back in the 80s and stuff, we were never taught that. I don't know if some people were, but just where I grew up in Dallas, Texas, we were never taught that. Now, I want you to pay attention to something. I also checked out the Indians, right? Supposedly the Europeans came over here, axed them, did all these things with them, right? Oh, killed them off with diseases, did all these things to them, right? And just took these people land. So we're going to give them a certain reservations. We're going to preserve them, this and this and that, right? And then I noticed another thing. They're not medicated up like that with psych meds. They're not thrown in prisons and jails. They're not did all these horrible things too. They're not targeted for abortions. And Africans aren't either. And we've been sold all this in history. So why Black Americans? What is it with what's called Black Americans that they target the most? And another thing, all lands and all these people who have came here, Europeans, Africans, Mexicans. You get the drift. Chinese, China. You get what I'm saying, right? Puerto Rico, Puerto Ricans, Puerto Rico, Hawaiians, Hawaii. You understand what I'm saying, right? So all peoples have their stuff. Why is it that blacks are the only ones that don't have their stuff, but this is the only land that's called a land of immigrants? Can somebody explain that to me? And why they are targeted the most on this land? Maybe you can explain it. Maybe you got the answers that I don't have. Don't come to me with fake history, because I'm not going down with that. You know what I'm getting at. You know exactly what I'm getting at. And I'm talking about, it's been a desecration upon black people. Some black people, do not get me wrong, they do not go through that. They are the what you call the chosen few, right? We're not talking about chosen by God. We're talking about selected by the system. But millions and millions and millions of blacks have been done so horrible throughout the years. It's been years and years. I've been witnessing since I've been a kid. It's been years. Years and years and years. And then there's always been the ones who are okay and do pretty well. You understand what I'm saying? I used to even question Dr. Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. I know people said, they did this, they did that. I say, yeah, but if it was really all about race, how come these people got to hang out with all these people when it was all about race? They got to go places that the other blacks didn't get to go. They was over there being bit by dogs, being mistreated. They got to go to galas. They got to be on news with white men and sit down and talk to them and drink wine with them. And the other blacks were being done dirty and couldn't find jobs and being slapped across the head and threatened with dogs and beat down. Come on, y'all. Come on, y'all. Now, nobody's necessarily using all those techniques today, which some people still do subliminally. Even black folks do it to other black folks. I know what I'm talking about. I've seen it. But there's still this targeting when it comes to black Americans. This stuff runs very, very deep. Very deep. And yes, it is tied into this immigration policy stuff. It runs deep, guys. And that's why I was asking the question, while all these immigration things were being decided, do you understand what I'm saying? About bringing the most skilled immigrants over here for America's national interest. What was happening to the black people during that time? And it was a lot of darkness, lots of darkness. And instead of them saying things like that, well, what we'll do is we'll keep out the immigrants that are not that skilled, so that the ones who don't have the pretty much, they didn't say black, but that's really what they mean. The black folks that didn't have no jobs and no incomes and all that old kind of stuff. We don't want to be a burden on them. We want them to, be okay. But were they okay? And was that the truth? And was that what was really happening? Even the blacks who had good jobs. What happened to all of the black constructionists? The black construction guys. What happened? There used to be a lot of guys that were in construction, guys. Lots of black men in construction. Where did they go? Where did they go? Where did they go? Where did they go? Where did these black men go? So that's why this is such a concern to me. And there are black people who say she don't care about us. She don't care. Listen, there are some black people that I don't have a taste for, honey. I don't hide it, because they're very, very nasty and parady when it comes to other black people in their lives. What we got, what y'all ain't got, who we is, who y'all are not. Very, very just evil to me. So I don't have a taste for that kind of attitude. I don't have a taste for people getting on camera and pretending that they love the whole human black race and they're fighting for justice and fighting for equality and fighting for shooshi. And then out here trying to dog out other black people from achieving their dreams behind closed doors when they think nobody looking. I don't think so, y'all. I'm very honest up front. If I don't like something, I don't like something. If it's getting under my skin, you gonna know. You understand what I'm saying? But that doesn't mean I'm not a person that doesn't care. If I didn't care, I wouldn't waste my time. I do care. I care about what happens to me, and I care about what happens to people like me. So what really went down during this time, all these years, even beyond the 90s, even in the 80s, even in the, listen, guys, way before then, what's been going on with immigration all this time? What's really been going on? What's been that transaction that was made that this land was stolen from people and it will be called a land of immigrants? And no other place is called that because people have associations with their peoples and their lands. What transaction was made on this soil for that to happen? And why are Black Americans, not all, but the majority of them, targeted so hard like that? And many of them have been destroyed. Many of them have been killed. We're talking about millions, guys, throughout the years on this land, through institutional ways, over medication, all kinds of stuff, cutting their wounds off through hysterectomies. During the 80s, there was this big thing going on with hysterectomies. Oh, big time. They were cutting the Black women's wounds out like it wasn't nothing. It's been a targeting thing like that. It's been a hateful, heinous thing like that. So, guys, that's why I wanted to talk about that. What happened since the Jordan Commission? So what has happened since then? So that's what they did during the Clinton administration, right? Well, in 1996, the IIRIRA and related laws, Congress passed the Illegal Immigration Reform and Immigrant Responsibility Act, the IIRIRA. This is what it is, guys. The Anti-Terrorism and Effective Death Penalty Act, the AEDPA. Wow. But anyway, these laws tighten grounds for removal, limited judicial discretion, and expanded mandatory detention in many cases, and made deportation easier for many criminals, convictions, and immigration violation. These laws reflected the Commission's emphasis on the rule of law and enforcement, but also had a wide lasting consequences, right, on Black communities. Late 1990s and 2000s, E-Verify and employer verification ideas. The concept the Commission pushed, reliable employer checks, eventually evolved into federal state E-Verify programs. E-Verify began as a voluntary experimental federal system in the late 1990s and gradually expanded. It reduced some unauthorized hiring, but has gaps and false positives. Okay. And post 9/11, the reorganization, DHS and ICE, 2002 to 2003, after the 9/11, the government reorganized immigration functions and moved under DHS and ICE and was created to centralize interior enforcement and criminal investigations. This tied the immigration more tightly to Homeland Security. Okay, that's according to Immigration and Customs Enforcement, right? So all of this stuff was going on. And it also covers why so many undocumented people are in the U.S. now. So according to this, World Bank blogs, the push factors from origin countries, endemic violence, gangs, political instability, poverty, corruption, and climate shocks, droughts, hurricanes, especially in parts of Central America, push people to migrate. International organizations and the World Bank like climate and economic shocks to increase migration. The pull factors in the U.S., labor demand. Now that's the second one. So this is really what it was about. Because like I said, if you listen to Clinton, you listen to all this stuff, it was about, and you listen to what's going on today, it was about America's national interests, what they want and what they did not want. So the pull factors in the United States, labor demand, agriculture, construction, services, established migrant networks and perceptions of better safety, economic opportunity, encourage migration, employers' demand for labor often persists despite stronger verification. This is from the Economic Policy Institute. Also, visa overstays and changing source countries. So a significant share of unauthorized population is people who entered legally through tourist, student, temporary visas, and they overstayed. Also, the composition has diversified beyond Mexico, more immigrants from Central South America, Asia, and Africa in recent years. And this is the Pew Research Center. Okay. Bottlenecks and limited legal pathways. So, legal immigration channels are limited and backlogged. Long waits for family visas, employer visas. So, people who could qualify for slower legal routes sometimes choose irregular entry or overstay. And this is according to migrationpolicy.org. So that's some of the reasons why, right? Girl, America been sneaking immigrants in here for a long time. You guys saw the news clips of them also giving them licenses. They were giving them licenses and they wasn't even taking the test. America makes a lot of laws, but they break a lot of laws too, right? And let's talk about the war on ICE. What's actually going on? So the intentional theft of land and resources in America. Okay, this is what's really going on. Let me say this. Let me say this about all the confusion in the media, right? People love to make you think. Guys, let me tell you something. I said it earlier and I'm going to say it again. If you feel you are entitled to something and people been doing it that way for many, many years, what makes people think that they should stop now? Who are you to tell us? People do it all the time. You let them in, how you ain't gonna let me in? You listen. When people feel they are entitled to just come to a country whose borders have been wide open for many, many years, and then all of a sudden you just gonna act like you just gonna stop some stuff. It doesn't work like that. And so people are gonna cry wolf. The people that don't want to act right, that don't want to comply, they're going to make up all kind of stories to make it look like, oh, this is happening over there, this is happening over there. There are going to be some cases where some things are going to be done wrong. I'm not going to subtract that. If our polices haven't always been, tighty, nitty, nitty, what makes us think that any other enforcement camp would be the same? So I do understand that there are going to be some people that do some things wrong, but does that represent the whole ICE body? Of course not. Of course not. And when people don't want to get their tails out and go back to where they illegally come from because they feel that they're entitled, your border's been open all this time and you can't come telling us now, because what have people been doing all this time? They have been stealing this land from people that it belonged to. And they have been trying to get rid of them and lying to them about history and their families and where they come from. And the immigrants have long been replacing. And there's so much injustice here. And I know people don't have the voice to say it. And I know some people gonna say she wrong, she correct. I don't care what people have to say. The proof is in the pudding. The proof is in the pudding, sweetheart. The proof is in the pudding. Only one people on the face of the earth that don't know who they are, that don't know their identity, is what they say. This is absolutely a sham. It's a sham and a shame. Thank you for tuning in to TCLN Network, Austin Public. TCLN Network is independently produced by IBK Media Productions. To support TCLN Network financially, visit paypal.me/TCLN Network. Also, TCLN Channel Podcasts. To learn more about TCLN Network, visit thecreativeleadershipnetwork.com and follow on all socials, TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram at IBK Media Works.